host for Read for Pleasure, Study to Learn. It's the channel where we try to emphasize to you the importance of not only just reading your Bible, but studying your Bible as well. Now, of course, we highly recommend you read your Bible on a daily basis. And we need to study our Bible sometimes. Slowly, carefully study the Bible and see what it's really saying. And think about it, because that's when you really start to understand the Bible. And that's also when God starts to reveal to you things you've never dreamed of before. But we're going to take a little bit of a step back here tonight for just a few moments, because I want to pay tribute to a man, and I think you already know probably who I'm talking about. We had a terrible tragedy in our country this past week. Charlie Kirk, truly a friend of God, was gunned down in his prime. And I want us to just think about this for a few minutes. I want to say a few words about Charlie Kirk. I want to dedicate these moments to a man, not a political party, not a right or left agenda, or a right or left ideology, but to a man who tried to present the truth as found in God's holy word, the Bible. That was where Charlie found his truths, and that is where we will all find our truths. So that was the purpose of Charlie's mission. And the truth, folks, is not determined by political parties, not by special interest groups who try to bend and twist the facts in order to meet their agenda, their narrative. And I'm talking about on both sides of the aisle, okay? It happens on both sides of the aisle. This is not political. I said that up front. It is not political. This is about a man, Charlie Kirk, okay? But it seems that there's no longer, or seems to be no longer, a place for the truth in our politics, in our country or society, or maybe even the whole country. The truth has really taken a beating. Now, we have variations of it, but, I've heard it said that your truth may not be my truth. Now, fortunately, I can tell you there's no options on truth. There's no degrees of truth. There's only the truth, because a half-truth is a complete lie. You can take bits and pieces of the truth and then start to veer off with your ideas of what the truth is and form it into something you want, but it's not what the Bible says. That's not the truth. And, in John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You notice he didn't say I am a truth, or I am one of the truths, or I'm one of the options that may be true. He didn't say that. He says, I am the truth. So if we're really interested in finding the truth on any subject, just look in the Bible. See what Jesus says about it. You'll find it there. It's not some half-wit concoction of a man with an agenda, but the truth according to the God of this universe. That's the truth, folks. Charlie Kirk tried to engage in open, public, respectful debate as a means of opening lines of communication in an effort to bring peace and brotherhood back to our country. And for this beautiful idea, he was gunned down by an extremist who did not have the courage to face the truth. So he decided to silence Charlie. and Charlie and his attempt to diplomatically show people a way towards unity. That's what Charlie was all about. Now, what I'm about to say will undoubtedly be misquoted, twisted, turned all about, because that's what people do who don't want to hear the truth or can't handle the truth. But all I'm going to say is, please don't say what I didn't say, okay? And by that I simply mean I'm not comparing the mortal man, Charlie Kirk, to the immortal Jesus Christ. That's not what I'm doing. But when I think about Charlie's death, I find it somewhat ironic that the original Christian movement was not flourishing until after Jesus Christ gave his life in public on the cross. And almost immediately, Christianity spread to the four corners of the earth. It took off. We have, for years, many top theologians have for many years, 100 years probably at least, spoke of our nation's need for a national revival. And now, another man has given his life in public as a result of his beliefs in that same Christian message. Wouldn't it also be ironic if this death caused a tsunami of revival in our country? Wouldn't it be ironic if Charlie's death made it possible for our nation to rightfully claim that saying that we've heard all of our lives? Wouldn't it be nice if we could rightly claim for once, in God we trust? Or justify what is probably the most often requested 3-word prayer in our country's history. That is, God bless America. That's just a 3-word prayer. That's what it is. You're asking God to bless this country. And it wouldn't be good if we could justify asking that. My question is, in the state of our current situation here in our country, are we justified to ask God to God bless America? Are we justified for him for us to ask him to bless America? I'm afraid we're not. I'm afraid we can't even justify a 3-word prayer. And that's sad, and it's scary, and it's just a shame. It's what it is. But I'm afraid that's where we have taken this country. Now, each day since Charlie's death, you can go on the internet and you can find things that are really, really interesting. Like people will say things like, I haven't been to church in 40 years, but I'm going back now. Or, I've never owned a Bible in my life, and I went and bought one today. That's wonderful. Think about that. Could this be the start of the tsunami? But I want to tell you that I hope it is. I'm cautiously optimistic that it is. And to Charlie and his family and his close friends and that he left behind, we want to say to you, we honor you, we respect you, we love you, and we hurt with you. We do. As a country, we hurt with you. So go ahead, have your period of grieving. That's perfectly natural and healthy. It was a tremendous loss, and you have every right in the world to go through the grieving process, of course. And even though you may not be able to see the day of which I'm speaking right now, I think you will eventually. And I think there's going to be a day when Charlie does in death what couldn't be done in his life: a nationwide revival. I believe that with all my heart. I believe this could be it. Now it's up to us to see that Charlie didn't die in vain. And It's up to us to all unite, all of us unite, Republican, Democrat, Independent Party, black, white, Asian, male, female. It's up to all of us to unite in brotherly love and see this through. Do you remember 9/11, 2001, when the Twin Towers came down? What a tragic day. It was a horrible day for our country, but it's also a wonderful day for our country in the sense that when that happened, the next day or several weeks, you would never see a car going down the road that didn't have an American flag on it somewhere, hanging out the window, or somehow on that car you would see an American flag flying. And you'd pull up to a stoplight and you'd hear the radio blaring in the car next to you, and it'd be playing God Bless the USA, the song. And I'm going to tell you, that was the most patriotic period I have ever witnessed in my life. And it's just amazing the movement that came from that. But here's the problem. After a while, the flags started coming back out of the window. After a while, you stop at the light and there's no longer patriotic songs playing on the radios. And it was back to business as usual. And now we are in a situation in this country that may be worse than we've ever been as far as unity is concerned. And we need to have that same type of spirit of unity and Christian love, brotherly love in this country that we had from the patriotic standpoint of after the Twin Towers came down. That was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we're in a position to have an even more beautiful thing. We could have that revival that could wash over this entire country from shore to shore and very possibly save this country. We are in desperate need of help, and I believe this could be the start of it. I really do. I see signs of it, and I certainly hope that it is. Now, there's one other thing that I saw on the internet I want to just call your attention to, and I don't know if it means anything, but I do think it's interesting. A guy wrote in and said that Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 p.m. And if you turn to the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verse 23. 12:23, did you get that? Charlie shot at 12:23. John chapter 12, verse 23. It's very interesting to see what is said there. Now, I'm going to go back and say again, I don't know that it means anything, but I certainly think that it could. I think that it could. And I want to read it to you. So, chapter 12 in the Gospel of John, verse 23, it says, "And Jesus answered them, saying, The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." Folks, let's start glorifying God in our country. Could 12:23 p.m. be the hour that this country finally wakes up and starts glorifying God instead of glorifying political parties, special interest groups, anything like that? Glorifying celebrities, ball players. We need to get back to glorifying God in this country. Now, I hope everybody heard this and can put their heart into action, trying to see this thing through that Charlie has started through his death, actually. I want to say to you, I thank you for bearing with me and listening to this. And I just want to say God bless you. And I hope that this is the beginning of a new movement in this country, a positive one. Thank you so much God bless Charlie Kirk. God bless his family. God bless you. And God bless America. Thank you. All right, let's continue with our study of the book of Job. This will be the part 2, and it's called, the title of this is The Job Job, and then in parentheses, it was a setup. And truly it was a setup. And we discussed that in part 1. And if you've missed part 1, you really need to go back and watch it. And so you will know what's going on in part 2. But to give you a very brief recap of part 1, very brief recap of part 1, Job is believed to be the oldest book in the Bible other than the first 11 chapters of Genesis. It's estimated that it was written between 2000 BC and 1800 BC. That's a long time ago. And one of the reasons they feel that way is because Job contains more references to the creation and to the flood and other primeval events than any other book other than the book of Genesis. Now, Job was a righteous man, and he had 10 kids that he loved dearly. He was a very wealthy man. He had just thousands and thousands of livestock animals. He had thousands of acres of land. He had a huge house, a mansion for that time and period. And it was an interesting life for Job in that he had it all. Now, we talked about in verse 6, it says the sons of God, which would be angels, okay? And the reason it says the sons of God, because angels are not born, they are created by God. They had no parents. So the sons of God is referring to angels, came to heaven to visit with God, to meet with God. And it says, and Satan came along with them. Very curious as to how that can be and why that would be. And we went over that and explained it. So please go back and listen to part 1. It will help you a lot. Now, the setup part of it was the fact that when God asked Satan what he had been doing, when he got to heaven with the angels and having this little meeting, and God said, Satan, what you been doing? And Satan says, I've just been walking to and fro in the earth and walking up and down in the earth. That's all he said. But God set him up. He outsmarted him. Satan didn't say anything about trying to trick anybody or do anything, but see, God already knows everything. So it was a futile attempt on Satan's part, but he thought he had him buffaloed. But God knew what he wanted. So God, in his infinite wisdom, just out of the blue said, have you ever considered my servant Job? You see, God said that because he knew Job was the only man on earth who could withstand the pressure that Satan was going to put on him. Any other man on earth probably would have given in to Satan and did what he wished would happen, and that is curse God to his face. And then Satan could walk around with his chest thrown out, boasting about how, see, God, I told you. They didn't really care a thing about you. They care about what you give them. And without that, they don't care about you at all. But you see, what Satan didn't realize was Job was the one man on earth who could handle that pressure. But Satan fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. He fell for that trap that God set for him. So that's kind of brings us up to where we are right now, and that explains the setup. One other thing I want to mention in part 1, I was speaking about the fact that Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters, 10 children. And I believe the reason that that is even in the Bible, that has any importance, is because I believe the 7 sons are that number because there's 7 days of the week. And it says the sons on their day would prepare a feast and invite all the other siblings to their house, and they would have a feast and a celebration and fellowship. And so when it says that, I believe it means that each one on assigned days, I'll take today, you take tomorrow, and so forth, 7 sons for each day of the week, seven days of the week. And it even mentions that Job would get up early in the morning and offer a burnt sacrifice just in case the night before his sons or daughters had done or said or even thought anything, off color, anything that shouldn't have been said or done or thought about. He would offer that burnt offering. Now, I don't see the reason for Job doing that unless they were doing it each day of the week. But there is another way to look at it. When it says on their day, it could have been referring to their birthday, because sometimes the Bible will make a reference to a person and refer to their day, and that means the date of their birth. And it could be meaning that. But like I said, I don't see the need for Job to get up early every morning and have a sacrifice if it only happens 7 times a year. So I still believe the 7 sons and the 7 days of the week are important, and that's the reason it even mentions them at this point, okay? So, having said that, I am going to start by simply reading just like we always do, Job chapter 1, verse 11 through 22. But actually, to tell you the truth, I'm going to go back to 9 and 10 and start, because 9, 10, and 11 are kind of like a snowball stuck together. And if you don't have them all cling together, then it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't work. So I'm going to start with 9, then 10, and then we'll go into 11 through 22. Let me get my eyes on here. Okay, and it says in verse 9, then Satan answered the Lord and said, doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him and about his house and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. See, the devil said he's worshiping him because what you give him. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power, only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. And there was a day when Job's sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, the oxen were plowing, and the asses feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was still speaking, there came another and said, the fire of God is fallen from heaven, and hath burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the Chaldeans made out 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and it fell upon the young men from the wilderness, and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Okay? Now, a lot of information in there, and we're going to break it down so you can see just how much information that is. Now, that would be, if you were sitting down just reading through it, whatever you got out of that would be what you get from reading it. But I think you're going to get a whole lot more when you break it down into a study mode, and that's what we're going to do right now. Okay? First of all, I want to go to verse 11, and Satan challenges God to take all that Job possesses, because he claims if you will take it away, he'll curse you to your name. Well, God counters Satan by giving him the power to take all that Job has, with one stipulation: you cannot put your hands on Job himself. Okay? Now, right now, it looks like Satan will have the power to take all of his possessions, but he will not be able to hurt Job physically. But then verse 13 is a strange location. When I read this and I study this, verse 13 says, there was a day when his sons, speaking of Job, there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And that's all it says. It doesn't say any more than that until you get all the way over to verse 18. So this is wedged in between God and Satan have a conversation, and then verse 14 is when the tragedies start happening. And I don't really see why that would be put in between all those, because it has nothing to do with any of those right now. It seems like it would have been better placed if it had been in front of 18, where the children are killed. But I've always told you, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to try to bluff my way through anything. I cannot tell you why it is placed where it is. If anyone knows, I would love to hear about it. But I think the only thing I can say is I must not be far enough along in my Christian walk for the Lord to feel like I am ready for that information, for that revelation. And I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. All in due time, all in God's time. And he will let me know when I'm ready for it. So I'm okay. But it does seem a little strange that it would be placed right there, wedged in between other things that has nothing to do with that. All right, so we're going to go on. So God has countered Satan by saying, you will have the power to take everything Job has, but you cannot touch him yourself. Now, you remember when you were a kid and you watch cartoons and somebody would have a bright idea, all of a sudden it'd be a light bulb go off over their head, and I kind of visualize that happening to Satan right here in verse 14. I have to believe he thought he had found a loophole and was going to be able to pull one over on God. It says, when he gave him the power of everything, in 13, it mentions the sons and all that. And I think this is where the light bulb goes off for Satan, because he says, you know what? He says, I can't touch Job, but he didn't say I couldn't touch the children. I've got him. I will beat Job down with so many tragedies, and I will save the children for last. And by this time, he'll be hanging by a thread. And when I lay that on him about the children, it's over. It will be a short day of work for me. I'm sure it's over. And I can just see him grinning and jumping around with his minions, so excited. He had a master plan, and he's just so sure this is going to work, because he is going to take those children, and Job is going to he's going to break. That's what Satan's hoping and thinking, and probably with a reasonable reason to think that. I think most people probably would break way before that. But anyway, eyes back on. Okay, so in 14, the bad news starts coming in. All right. 14, it says, there came a messenger unto Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the asses feeding beside of them. Every single one of the oxen and the asses were there, and the Sabaeans of another tribe came in, stole the oxen and the donkeys, and killed all the servants that was tending to them. So Job has to be saying, oh my gosh, what a terrible thing to have happen. But it gets worse. Then in 16 it says, while this messenger was yet speaking, there came also another. So this one hadn't even finished telling about the tragedy yet. And here comes another one saying, Master, I got to tell you this. And the fire of God is fallen from heaven and hath burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Now, I want us to think about this for just a second. This is obviously describing a bolt of lightning. I have to believe that. I can't make sense out of anything else. The fire of God falling from heaven, I believe would have to be lightning, because it says it burned them all up and consumed them. But I want you to think about it for a second. There's 7,000 sheep. That's a lot of sheep. And they're not just bundled together in a little area. 7,000 sheep is going to take some area for them to cover, for them to crowd in there. This must have been some kind of bolt of lightning. That's all I can say. Because not only did it kill 7,000 sheep, it killed all the servants. It takes to 10 to 7,000 sheep. It consumed them, it says. If you were the messenger bringing that information to Job, I guarantee your eyes are as wide as saucers. Have you ever, can you even imagine seeing a bolt of lightning that big? That blows my mind when I process that. So just think about what it's saying to you. Burned up 7,000 sheep and all the servants that tended them. So that's just a wild, I can't even wrap my head around that. Then while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the Chaldeans made out 3 bands, which means they divided into 3 groups, and they fell upon the camels and have carried them away and slain the servants with the edge of the sword. Well, there's 3,000 camels. And they stole every one of them, and they killed all the servants again. So Job's day has gone from bad to worse to how can it get any worse to it can't get any worse till it's about to get worse right here, okay? Verse 18. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead. Wow. The devil had a pretty good plan, because by this time, I'm sure Job is about at the end of his rope. And then you lay on him that his 10 children are all dead after hearing all this other catastrophe. It was a master plan by the devil. It really was. But he didn't plan on one thing, okay? And here's what that one thing was. I'm going to read to you verse 20. Now listen to this very clearly, very carefully. Then Job arose, rent his mantle. That means he tore his clothes, which was typical of the Jewish men at that time when they were in duress or sadness, and shaved his head, which is something a Jewish man would never do, because that's a total disrespect for yourself to do something like that. And he fell down upon the ground. Now, when he fell down upon the ground, I can just see the devil grinning from ear to ear. Gotcha. But then something strange happened. And I'm sure the devil said, what's he doing, though? Because the next two words blew the whole project wide open. Those next two words is, he fell down upon the ground and worshiped. The devil never planned on that. He did not foresee that being what Job would do after the kind of day he has put on to Job. Surely he will curse the Lord and turn it against him. No, Job worshiped the Lord. And you know that had to blow Satan's mind. And then it says, in 21 it says, blessed be the name of the Lord, Job said. And in 22 it says, in all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Folks, that is a righteous man. And I can tell you right now, I don't know if I could do that after what he had been through that day. I'm going to be honest and tell you, I probably would fold under that pressure. That's just a lot of pressure. I don't know. I'd like to think I wouldn't, but until you've walked a mile in this man's shoes, you don't know what you're going to do. So I think you need to take into consideration that Job has had one heck of a tough day. But at the end of that tough day, what did he do? He fell down and worshiped God. He said, blessed be the name of God. And he did not sin. He did not curse at God. He did not blame God. He didn't jump up wanting to know why and all this. He worshiped God, and he sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. That is some powerful, powerful things to think about. And the bottom line is, it's telling us, as hard as it may be, when we are hit with the things that affect us in a negative manner, if we will worship the Lord at that moment, turn to the Lord instead of turning away from him and cursing him and blaming him, it will be much to our benefit. Because we don't understand a lot of times why God does what he does. And the Bible clearly says that there's some things we won't know until we reach the other side. Clearly it says that. But this really stung Satan because he was so sure of a really quick victory. So this really stung him, and it made him very, very angry, which is not particularly a good thing to do, generally speaking. So Job was an unusual man. Job was a wealthy man who lost all he had, including his family of 10 children. And yet he still worshiped the Lord. What an amazing, amazing thing. So let's keep in mind, the next time we have a little setback, whatever it may be, instead of running from God, let's run to God. And let's see what the difference is. Now, I understand it's very cavalier for me to sit here and say, let's do this and let's do that. Until you're there in that situation, it gets a lot, let me put it this way, it gets a whole lot harder when you're actually on the hot seat, as opposed to sitting here, reading the Bible and giving you instructions on study and so forth. I understand that. I'm not ignorant, and I understand that would be very, very difficult. But I want you to think about one thing. Now, I had a first cousin whose husband dropped dead of a heart attack at an early age. And I went to visit my first cousin and even took her a Bible. And she told me, I'm not in the mood for a Bible right now. In fact, I'm mad at God. I'm very mad at God, and I don't even want to talk about him because I am really, really upset. There's no reason that he had to take my husband at this age. And, I understand her grief. I do that. I do understand that. But since we don't know everything, and God does, God knows what happened yesterday. He knows what's happening today. He knows what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't, okay? We need to keep in our mind this possibility. God may take someone from this earth out of mercy. Now, what do I mean by that? Since God knows the future, he may know that this man was going to be involved in a horrible accident of some sort 6 months down the road. And this accident would leave him unable to speak, unable to move, bedridden, in agonizing, unrelenting pain for as long as he lived, with no relief, not even able to tell you where he hurts or when he hurts. God may have been showing mercy to your spouse. So don't get mad at God for showing mercy to someone. And I think if we will try to think of it in those terms, it certainly will have a different type of feel to it, a different meaning to it. God taking that person. I don't say it'll be easy. I never claimed that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't grieve. Absolutely you should. But I think you have to be very careful. I think you're walking on thin ice when you proclaim that I am mad at God and I got something to say to him when I see him, and this is not right and he's going to have to explain to me. All I can tell you is be careful. Be careful. You're on thin ice. Be careful. You may not see God to have the chance to ask him those questions. You can read into that whatever you want to read, but the next time we will see God is in heaven. So first thing you got to do is get there. And I can tell you, I'm not sure you're going to get there if you approach any incident in this manner of screaming and cursing at God and saying he's going to have to answer for this and that sort of thing. I'm not sure you will ever have that opportunity, but we need to try to, if possible, and I'm not making, I'm not slighting the fact that it's a terrible loss, and of course we're going to grieve. I'm not. But I do think we need to put some serious thought into, there's a huge difference between going through the grieving process and cursing God for something that's happened. A huge difference. And I think we need to consider that. So at this point, I'm happy to say that the score is God 1, Satan 0. So Satan was not quite as smart as he thought he was. But it goes on. There's 41 chapters in Job, and Satan gets worse and worse and worse all the way through it. And we will not cover all of those chapters because we're going to go to some other things, but we may come back to them at a later date, or if there's a request, we will do that. In the meantime, please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, so we'll notify you when a new episode comes out. And I just want to say how honored we are that you would join us in watching these episodes. And I hope you're learning something. And I hope you'll go back and listen to this all again now that you have a base, a foundation, and because you'll pick up something different. Go back again, listen to it, and read those passages carefully, slowly, one at a time, and think with the brain that God gave you for that purpose. Think of what is actually happening, what's actually being said, what's the consequences going to be, what is the build up to this, and what's going to happen after this. Think about it. and you will start to understand your Bible like you have never understood it before. I promise you. So all I want to say at this point is thank you for joining us. God bless you, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you so much.